We've got a great question from our audience. John, the storyteller, who's a good friend of the Go F1 show. Good to have you, John, sending us a question, which was, how long do you think the fairly pleasant Max-Checo relationship will last before things turn ugly? Another question from Ziz0001, which is, I think Perez will always follow orders from the top. Do you agree? What do we think about that, Steve, the dynamic between Checo and Max, particularly in the context of Checo winning at Monaco, Checo out-qualifying Max this weekend in Azerbaijan, but then leaving the door open at the end of the straight to turn one for his teammate in this race?
I think you're talking two very different dynamics in the team there. In the first one, the Checo dynamic, I think, is going to be the best possible scenario for Red Bull. I think that Sergio, let's be honest, 2 years ago didn't even think he was going to have an F1 drive, and now he's in a car that's winning races. He's number 2 in the World Championship. This is all almost beyond his dreams, in a man, again, who's getting into the latter years of his F1 career. Maybe one more year he'll be looking to retire and be a driver coach or a presenter on here or whatever. And I think Sergio will be more than happy to assist Red Bull in every way. If the opportunity comes for him to fight for the World Championship, trust me, he'll go for it. There isn't one of these guys at this level in F1 will say, after you at a door. And these guys are going to really, I think, have a very good, it's what I would call a symbiotic relationship. It's a relationship where they'll help each other. I think things will be a little bit spicier with Daniel Ricciardo and Lando Norris. Daniel Ricciardo ain't the sort of guy who's going to relinquish anything easily. But Lando Norris, he's on the move. He is, you said earlier, Matthew, this is a guy who should be in the running for a World Championship. He knows he'll only have a short period of time. He's going to go for it.
Absolutely.
I might just add about this, though. That's a really good question about Checo and Max Verstappen, because I had a conversation with that with some friends just a couple of days ago. And this is kind of interesting because, yes, no driver is going to like getting beaten by his teammate. That's always the first guy you got to beat. But I actually think their relationship will be fine, because Verstappen is not precious about his reputation. He's probably the only driver in Formula One that's not precious about his reputation, because Verstappen's always putting himself out there to get beat in the virtual world. You know, he's probably, he's the driver most out there taking part in racings in lobbies and iRacing, or putting himself out there in RF2 to be beaten. And when he gets beaten by these sim drivers or real life drivers, he makes absolutely no fuss at all. And that's kind of one of the things I do really like about Verstappen. And I think if Perez raises his game, you know, because Verstappen's a competitor, he's going to fight really hard for sure. But if Perez raises his game and beats Verstappen just on merit, I actually think Verstappen's going to be really fine with that. I think Verstappen's, because he's not precious about his reputation.
Great point. And also, this leads very nicely into our next question, who is a gentleman who is in, you know him very well, Andrew Lawrenson, who is in the virtual world, as you put it, a very serious sim racer. And his question, there's two. One is we've already touched on, which is the scorecards for Seb's flick spin in the runoff. I agree with you, 11 out of 10. But also, serious question about the safety implications of these, you know, porpoising or grounding out the matters with the cars, the vertical G spikes delivered to the drivers, as Andrew puts it. Steve, what do you think about that?
Well, there was an attempt by Toto Wolff to politicize this situation by saying, oh, well, the organisers ought to change something in the regulations so that we all have to change our cars. With all respect to Toto Wolff, and I have a huge amount of respect for him, his cars are the only ones with a major problem. The other cars have a problem that can be gotten around. Maybe a ride height, mandated minimum ride height, might be one way we might look at developing this in the future. There's certainly something, though, that has to be done to eliminate the violent porpoising which is going on at the moment. And in particular with Ross Brawn at the FIA, you've got a man who has a great understanding of what goes on aerodynamically around ground effect cars. Interestingly, one of the big challenges Mercedes has is that the previous ground effect generation cars precede nearly all their engineering expertise. They don't have people around like Adrian Newey who built ground effect cars at Leighton House back in the early 1990s. And this is, I think, something that it's a Mercedes problem. It is a problem with some of the other teams as well. And we saw Kevin Magnussen being given a real good shaking in the Haas as well. And Ferrari aren't immune from this. And it may well even be that some of the reliability issues we saw today are driven by the fact that this thing is bouncing up and down and smashing into the road surface. But it was only really the Mercedes car that was actually physically hitting its bottom on the track. And it was interesting to note Lewis Hamilton suddenly made a comment, "My seat's gone cold." And I suspect, again, that could, dare I say, it could even be that he's worn a hole in the bottom of the car. So I think it's a Mercedes problem. Okay, yes, it would be the natural thing for any team boss to say, well, everybody's going to have to change have a rule change. But I think actually the problem is there. They've got an individual problem, and it's up to them to find the answer to the solution to that problem.